Hi, I want to talk briefly about writing sports stories. It's not really one of my huge areas. Um, I've never worked in sports writing, so that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. It's a lot out of my wheelhouse, perhaps. But I think news writing about sports is probably similar to news writing about anything, in that the key to it is that you're trying to write a story to give people information that they can't get elsewhere, and to help them understand the sport, and not just to write just what happened. Sports writing, typically the best sports stories are ones that perhaps get behind the scenes, talk to the players, ones that give you some context about perhaps training issues, coaching issues, and everything. And largely, one of the best ways to do it is to actually, follow the sport, go out there, talk to the players regularly, go out there and talk to the coaches regularly, do things like that. As far as it goes, um, with sports writing, is that people oftentimes, like they go into sports writing because they like to watch sports. And, that's a perfectly good reason to do something. Like, I kind of enjoy politics, and so I like political reporting, perhaps. Or I kind of enjoy, I don't know, I enjoy uh, I'm interested in philosophy, and I have a philosophy professor as well. So I also I like religion. I'm interested in religion, and so reporting about religious issues might be something that's in my wheelhouse. But this is perhaps a little bit different in that if you like going to festivals or you like eating cheese, doesn't mean you necessarily want to write about cheese. And nobody wants to read about how you like to eat cheese. I mean, if you like to go to festivals, I like to go to festivals, but writing about festivals is a completely different thing. And so, sports writing, I think you got to keep in mind, is just because you enjoy sports doesn't mean that you just need to talk about how you like the sport. Or how your opinion is. You are trying to get information people can't get elsewhere. People don't need just to hear your opinion. They're trying to get facts and information. And so when you go to a sporting event, if you're going to cover it, I always suggest trying to find out, go a little deeper, dig a little deeper, and try to write about, why was it, where was the turning point in the game? Why was there a turning point? What were they lacking? Why were they able to be turned off by this team? Why did they lose steam after the first half? What happened in the locker room? Things like that. And if you can give people a perspective on that, gives them a perspective on how the season's going to go, gives them a perspective on what the players are thinking, then you're actually giving some value. And you want to write it in that format. You don't want to do a play-by-play. A play-by-play isn't bad at some point in a story, but you don't want your entire story to be a play-by-play. I think a lot of times TV news does that because it's easy, it's lazy. They can give you the final score, and they can say, and then so and so went down the court and did a layup, and then they did this, and then they did that, and that's easy enough. I mean, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It gives a little bit of from the perspective of the people who are in the game, and other people that it is something people want. But I mean, the problem is that doesn't necessarily tell you anything about the season, or what their prospects are, or where they are, or where their weaknesses are, or any of the other things that really what a reporter can bring to it. Instead, what they can do is they can go out there and shoot video for 20 minutes and come back, talk about the 20 minutes of video they got, and talk about the score of the game and who was the point leader and all the stats, and they can put together a story and two or three of those stories fairly quickly, and that's usually what they do. But if you're going to be a sports reporter, then you're going to go out and you're going to cover like the World Series. Nobody wants to read play by play. They want to know, what were the standout moments? Who hit more hits? What were the weaknesses? Why were there so many errors? Things like that. And so your goal is to get behind the scenes. And the only way to do that is to actually get out and talk to the players, talk to the coaches, talk to people, and then to go to the game and actually watch the game. And I would recommend that if you go to a game, that you remain an engaged watcher. You should know, how the game's played. For example, if you're going to a soccer game and you've never been to a soccer game, it might seem strange that the clock moves up instead of down. It might seem strange that I forget, because college soccer is different than high school and everything. The amount of time on the clock will vary. The amount of time, quarters are played in like college basketball, but they're not played in professional basketball, or my vice versa, or high school they play halves, but they don't play quarters. I forget all the rules. I think maybe it is professional where they play quarters because they're trying to make sure there's commercial breaks. I don't know. See how much I know about this. Anyway, but the point is go out there. I would always recommend, from working with people who do sports reporting, they always say, keep your own stats, keep your own thing. Most of the time the schools will provide that. It's usually pretty easy for you to get stats after a game, to pour over those stats. But usually you're also trying to write on deadline, and so you want to get that story out fairly quickly, and so you can't always rely upon them. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, our printer's down, so we can't get it to you, or our iPad isn't working, so we're going to have to wait to get the stats or be able to email them or other things. And so don't ever rely upon them. Keep your own stats and go out there, learn a little bit about it, and do that. Now, one last thing about sports before we go is there is a style book, and I'm going to put some style book quizzes up on this. But if you turn in your style book, I have the 2015 style book here. If you look in the table of contents, there is a section that says sports guidelines and style. And if you look in the book, that in my book is page 400. It probably is the same if you have the same book, although yours might not be spiral bound. If you go there, it has a whole section on sports guidelines. This is one of the few areas where, there's enough uniquenesses about soccer and about different terminology and other things that you need to be aware of. There's about 25, 30 pages here. I will give a style book quiz over that. But, whether you refer to a player as 5'3" and how you qualify that, and how you spell layup and playoff and other things are all fairly important. And so you should review that and do that. So that's our main point about sports. I don't know if I'm going to make you guys go out and actually cover a sporting event. Sometimes in the past I have. At this point, I'm not 100% sure, just because we're close to the end of the semester, but I might very well do that. If I do, I will let you know. Otherwise,